My dear things, it's Blurs again in his smoking cap. Well, now, all you Peter Christian fans, you must remember to have a look at their website and bung your order in to get all these lovely garments they have. And these, marvellous these, aren't they? These gentlemen's smoking caps. You must all make sure you've got one of those. Anyway, bung in your orders and await the discount that the bosses at Peter Christian will give you. Now, the residue of the Melbourne Test match, the one that ended in just 2 days, a couple of days ago, is going to hang around for quite a long time. First of all, we've heard that the ICC has very sensibly and very correctly labelled the MCG pitch as unsatisfactory. The match referee, Jeff Crow, the New Zealand batsman, has, in his report, he said that it just didn't measure up to standards. It wasn't quite the lowest marking, which is unfit for Test cricket, but it was the second lowest, and they've got a sort of naughty point with it, which is going to hang around and they won't be able to get rid of for another 5 years. So they've got to mend their ways. The MCG groundsman, do you know, he is called today not groundsman or curator, as they used to say in Australia, but the executive director of the turf. Isn't it extraordinary? It's absurd, really, isn't it? But there we are. That's the way, the madness of the modern world. Well, now, England have got quite a lot to think about, haven't they? They won that Test match, but it didn't really, well, it mustn't be allowed to cover up what has been abject weaknesses through the first 3 matches when the Ashes were at stake, and all 3 won by Australia in the space of just 11 days. The management, well now, the England players are being very loyal to the management. They love McCullum, the head coach, and Joe Root, after the match, has given a very strong interview of great loyalty. But then Joe Root is a very loyal man. He's in the thick of it in the dressing room. He's an important figure, and I would expect him to be loyal. But let's just look at McCullum. First of all, we had, which the management have now admitted, a very inadequate preparation. And I think this goes back to the fact that McCullum didn't really understand quite the intensity of an Ashes battle in Australia. He'd only been there with a New Zealand side, and there is nothing like the same passion involved as Australia v New Zealand as there is Australia v England. Whether this is a hangover, probably, I suppose, of the old colonial thing of rulers and rules, and the Australian is wanting to get that. I suppose that happens all around the world, where England did once rule that people like to beat their former rulers on the head. That's quite understandable. I don't think there's anything wrong about that, although I dare say modern thinking means that one has to be a little bit careful saying that. Anyway, McCullum had organised the fact that there was very little preparation, just that one match against the British Lions in Perth before the first test. There should have been first-class matches in Australia, and this is a lesson, I think, for all time. McCullum, too, since he took over the dressing room, has got rid of as many of the specialist coaches as possible. There was no fielding coach in Australia. Look at the catching, the disastrous catching, especially in Adelaide. There was no wicket-keeping specialist coach. He was kicked out by McCullum, who took charge of the wicket-keeping. But he's got a lot to do. He hadn't got time, really, to concentrate on Smith, who dropped that howler, didn't he, when he dropped head early on in the Adelaide Test. McCullum has induced a feeling that Bazball solves everything. It doesn't. And we've seen that very clearly in this series. Bazball has got to be disciplined. And one of the things about that, there's been an obsession with Ollie Pope, keeping him in the side. Bethel came in, didn't he, for Melbourne, and made that wonderful 40 in the second innings. And really, I think should have been there before. He's been treated abominably by the England management over the last year, when he's only been allowed just 4 first-class matches. He's been in the England dressing room as cover for Pope, carrying out the drinks in Test match after Test match. Well, another thing about, incidentally, this pitch at Melbourne, very bad for Test cricket. 2-day matches like this are appalling for Test cricket. What did we see? We saw all the skills associated with the helter-skelter of T20 cricket. Well, no one can build an innings anymore. Defensive techniques have gone out of the window. And you could see that. Batsmen 20 wickets fell on the first day in Melbourne, 16 on the second. No side got to 200, and no batsman got more than 46. And that is an indictment of the surface, certainly, but also of modern techniques or the lack of defensive techniques. And really, the cricket that is being played today, or we saw being played in Melbourne, is not the sort of cricket that's going to encourage people to come and watch test matches. 20,000 England supporters out there have now got 3 days to try to fill in Melbourne before moving on to Sydney, where a great many more people are flying out, including yours truly. And I only hope that when I get there, I shall be able to see more than half a day's cricket. I'm looking forward to it, but it may be that you don't hear my report on the first day or even the second day because of the flying schedules, which I'm afraid may get in the way. Now, the news for the Sydney Test match, Gus Atkinson, the England bowler, is out of it. He pulled a hamstring late on in the Australian innings, second innings at Melbourne. And so he won't be there. We know too that Australia will be without Cummins and Nathan Lyon, in addition to Hazelwood. So they're going to be very beatable yet again. And if England do win in Sydney and they go home having lost 3-2, okay, it puts quite a gloss on it, doesn't it? But it mustn't be allowed to hide the fact that England's cricket is in considerable disarray, the way they played in those first 3 matches. I believe that McCullum and Bazball have run their course. I think they've both got to go. I personally would go straight to Freddie Flintoff. He's survived, well, he got over his wild child days as a cricketer, didn't he? We had the Pedalo incident and all that. He had that horrendous car crash filming for Top Gear. He's somehow recovered that. He's become a very, very well-grounded individual, and you can see that watching him on television as he tries to teach deprived children and young men the ways of cricket up in Lancashire. He's a splendid chap, and I think he needs to come back to the England dressing room as quickly as possible, and his example would be just what England need, and he does need to bring that dressing room down to earth fairly rapidly. So I'm very, very keen to get Freddie Flintoff on board. It may be a big ask. The ECB may have to dig deep into their pockets, but that is the way it is, and I hope they are prepared to try. Anyway, there we are. We go to Sydney, and we've got the New Year's. Well, it starts 2 days after the New Year, in fact. So the hangovers don't get in the way. Let's hope England can do it again. But as I say, don't let's think that all is well if we do win this test match. The other thing, by the way, before I go, let me just say that I'm very anxious that Ben Stokes should remain in the captaincy. I think there are 1 or 2 things he would want to put right in his own performance, perhaps, in Australia. But he's done extremely well. He's bitten the bullet as far as injuries are concerned, because he's very prone to injury, but he's been brave, he's stuck to it. And also, you've got to remember that world-class all-rounders, like which Stokes is, they don't grow on trees, do they? He must stay in the England side, and if he's in the England side, he is the only man in my book who can captain them. So there we are, Peter Christian. Now make sure you get a look at the website. You bung in your orders for all those wonderful garments. And there we are, the gentleman's smoking cap. Lovely, isn't it? And see you next time.